In a world obsessed with noise, with constant validation and outward show, there exists a power so profound, so absolute, it defies every conventional understanding. We're not talking about some airy-fairy spiritual awakening here. This is the brutal truth of Command the Machiavellian core that allows you to master any situation, and yes, even those rare beings, the dark chosen ones who make demons uneasy. Most leaders, most individuals are forever chasing something: recognition, power, influence. They build their empires on ego, on the desperate need to be seen, to be right, to dominate through force. But this is the path of the weak, the vulnerable. Because anything that needs to be fed can be starved. Anything that craves can be manipulated. The first principle of commanding the truly formidable is this: cultivate a stillness so absolute it devours all fear, all need, all external validation. Consider the ordinary person. Their minds are a constant battlefield, worries about the future, regrets from the past, the relentless clamor of opinions and expectations. They react to every slight, every challenge, every whisper of doubt. This constant reaction is their greatest weakness. It's the gaping maw that darkness feeds on. Demons, or any astute adversary for that matter, don't fear your light. They understand it. They know how to twist it, how to exploit your desire to be seen as good or special. They seduce you with visions of grandeur, with the promise of more power, more adoration, if only you'd just bend. But what happens when there's nothing to feed? When you encounter someone who has entered this profound stillness, someone who no longer flinches from suffering, who doesn't beg for light, who never seeks approval, there is simply nothing to consume. No weakness to exploit, no ego to inflate, no fear to amplify. This isn't perfection. It's an absolute emptiness of illusion. They've incinerated every mask they once wore, buried every lie they ever told themselves. They walk through this world not to be worshipped, but merely to witness. I once spent 21 days in isolation in the high desert. No food, no human contact, just the relentless sun, the biting wind, and an echoing silence. On the 7th night, I felt a presence. Not evil, not dramatic, just profoundly hungry. It circled my tent like a predatory thought, waiting for me to believe it, to give it an opening. It whispered every hidden fear I had ever harbored, offered intoxicating visions of immense power, widespread influence, and fervent adoration. All I had to do was lean in just slightly. Just concede that I was exceptional, that I deserved more, that my pain was proof of some inherent entitlement. But I did nothing. I didn't engage. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself against the internal assault. I simply sat there utterly still. And the energy, finding no anchor, no point of purchase, eventually receded. It was in that moment I grasped it. True power isn't about resisting the dark. It's about becoming the one who no longer needs to resist. This isn't about innate talent or vast knowledge, or even charismatic presence. It's not measured by the trauma you've endured, but by how little of that burden you still carry. These rare individuals have navigated betrayals, abandoned by all they held dear, experienced a kind of spiritual crucifixion. Yet instead of clutching their wounds, they allowed the pain to carve them open, to hollow them out. Their suffering didn't become a badge of honor. It became the crucible that dissolved their very identity. They don't dispense wisdom from their scars. They embody it from their profound silence. They don't perform truth. They are truth. This frequency, this raw essence cannot be faked. It cannot be marketed. It cannot be intellectualized. It is something you become when everything you once clung to has been stripped away, yet somehow miraculously you are still here, breathing, observing, simply being. This is the unnerving truth for many of you reading this. You intuitively sense this is your true path. You've always felt it, this unsettling weight of a destined self. You've never quite fit in, even among those who consider themselves awakened. There's always been this ancient, dangerous undercurrent you felt compelled to hold back. And you're right, it's there. But the reason it hasn't fully erupted isn't because you haven't meditated enough or haven't consumed enough spiritual content. It's because you are still entangled, attached to the idea of being good to being right, to being perceived as holy, profound, or chosen. The truly elite, the 1% you seek to understand, have already died to all of that. That's why their power flows like an unstoppable quiet storm. So reflect on this. What part of you still yearns to be seen as powerful? What part of you still craves to be known as spiritual, awakened, or rare? That is precisely the part that provides sustenance for any opposing force. That is your exposed flank, because as long as you need to be seen, you can still be shaken. The true masters of this realm don't announce their arrival. They don't wear their power like a theatrical costume. They wear it like their own skin, natural, invisible, unspoken. They don't engage in debates, offer explanations, or defend their path, because they have already walked through every hell imaginable that could ever question their foundation. And here's the most unsettling part. Once you reach this stratum of being, you no longer even care that you've arrived. That's your undeniable sign. You don't aspire to be elite. You don't crave to be feared. You don't even need to be remembered. You simply are. And that in itself is more than enough. But to access this level, you must pass through the gate of annihilation. Not physical demise, but a complete spiritual disintegration. You must willingly relinquish everything you believe makes you worthy. You must release every single identity, even the most sacred ones. You must even release your very desire to be awakened. Because only in that total, absolute surrender does the deeper, true current of your power reveal itself, not as something you command, but as something that simply moves through you. So I put this before you, perhaps the most crucial question of your existence. Would you still traverse this path if no one ever knew you did? If your light remained unseen, if the world offered no recognition, no fame, no validation, no acknowledgement, would you still walk it? Because the truly elite do not walk for others. They do not walk for applause. They walk because the path is who they are. And if you are still here, if your heart has not recoiled, if your mind has not dismissed this as too intense, too overwhelming, too dark, then perhaps you are already one of them. You simply haven't surrendered deeply enough to truly perceive it. This is where we go next. We will delve deeper than anyone dares, stripping away the last vestiges of illusion that prevent you from becoming the one even demons fear to touch. Are you ready? Most aspire to command by raising their voice, by projecting dominance, by proving their worth in every interaction. This is the amateur's game, a desperate attempt to fill an inner void with external validation. True authority, the kind that compels even the formidable dark chosen ones, operates on a different frequency. It is an ancient power, not spoken, but profoundly felt. When an individual embodies this power, this Machiavellian mastery of self, they don't need to dominate a room with charisma posture or performative displays. They simply exist. And the space itself bends to their presence. The air shifts, becoming heavier, denser. Time seems to slow. People instinctively lower their voices or subtly avert their gaze, not from fear of a threat, but from an almost primal respect for something they cannot name, something utterly unshakable. This is the bloodless throne, a position of absolute power not seized through battle nor earned by intellectual brilliance, but forged in the crucible of absolute emptiness, total inner stillness, radical detachment, and uncompromising mastery over the self. The truly powerful don't need to wield power. Their power is their presence. Understand this, a truth most will never even glimpse. Authentic power does not react. It does not feel compelled to prove itself. It does not announce its arrival with fanfare. Why? Because it has nothing to lose, nothing to defend, nothing left to prove. The masters of this domain have long since moved beyond the battlefield. While others are still swinging their swords, desperately seeking validation in every skirmish, these individuals have already transcended the war itself. They do not fight because there is nothing left within them that needs to win, nothing that can be diminished by loss. This is precisely why darkness, be it energetic, emotional, or ancestral, does not approach them. A power that refuses to react cannot be provoked. And demons, much like lesser adversaries, feed on reaction. They thrive on your need to be perceived as right, your compulsion to defend your identity, your desperate craving for respect. But what happens when there is no need left, when you have systematically died to every one of those attachments? That is when you ascend to the bloodless throne. Consider a radical notion. Perhaps the strongest among us are not the loudest, not the ones constantly posting their insights, preaching their doctrines, or performing for an audience. Perhaps the true victors are those who have already achieved their conquest simply because they are no longer striving to be understood. They are not trying to gather followers. They are not even trying to teach. They are simply being. And in that profound state of being, they subtly bend reality in ways unseen. They can heal without touch. They can end arguments without uttering a word. They can shift trajectories with a mere glance. They don't require rituals. They are the ritual. They don't need to prove their presence. They have become the very field in which presence arises. So how did they reach this state? By losing everything, not physically, but internally. They shed the desperate need to be liked, to be loved, to be known. They relinquished the craving for safety, the desire to be admired, the compulsion to always be right. They navigated betrayal without cultivating bitterness. They endured isolation without erecting walls. They underwent profound personal transformation without constructing an identity around their awakening. They became nothing, and in that profound nothingness they discovered their throne. Not a throne of gilded opulence, but a seat in the void, an inner sanctuary where no emotion can control them, no thought can claim ownership, no desire can drive them. They remain human, still capable of feeling, but nothing moves them unless they consciously choose to be moved. Ponder that for a moment. How many of your thoughts today were genuinely your own choice? How many of your reactions were truly conscious responses? Or were you merely a puppet reacting to ancient programming, to invisible wounds, to unconscious fears? The true elite do not live that way. They do not react, they respond. And often they don't respond at all, because they understand that not every battle is worthy of your breath, not every question deserves an answer, not every insult merits a defense. Why? Because when you occupy the bloodless throne, you do not serve ego. You serve truth, and truth does not chase. It does not plead. It does not dance for attention. It simply is. That and nothing less is the essence of true sovereignty. And here's the brutal reality. No one tells you when you reach this stratospheric level of command, people will test you relentlessly. They will attempt to provoke you. They will project their own shadows onto you. They will fundamentally misunderstand your profound silence, your unyielding boundaries, your chilling detachment. They will label you as cold, distant, unbothered. This is precisely the moment where the last vestiges of the ego, that insidious, rare ego that survives even deep transformation, will attempt to reassert itself. It will whisper, "Show them who you truly are. Prove your depth. Explain your silence." But you do not. You owe no one access to your sovereign energy. You owe no one your frequency. You owe no one your light. You bestow it when you choose, not when they demand. This is what makes the true elite dangerous in the most sacred sense of the word. They have become sovereign, not just in their energy, but in their attention. They do not chase. They do not cling. And they absolutely will not compromise their frequency to maintain a connection that seeks to diminish them. They are not ensnared by the chaos of others. They do not shoulder the emotional debts of the broken. They have assimilated the ultimate lesson: you can extend love without feeling the need to rescue. You can offer guidance without attempting to control. And you can serve without sacrificing the core of your soul. So here is the stark question before you. Are you prepared to be fundamentally misunderstood in order to remain whole? Are you willing to be perceived as too much, or too distant, or too intense, simply so you are not forced to dilute your immense power merely to be accepted? Because the bloodless throne is not for those who crave to be liked. It is exclusively for those who demand to be free. Freedom. True freedom does not emanate from being worshipped. It springs forth from the absolute absence of any need for worship. Freedom does not come from painstakingly controlling outcomes. It is born from an unshakable trust in your own perfect alignment with reality. The elite 1% have mastered this profound truth. They remain unmoved by temptation because they have nothing left to prove to anyone, least of all themselves. They are unmoved by fear because they have already undergone the necessary, often brutal deaths of the self. They are unmoved by praise because they recognize praise for what it truly is: just another chain if you allow yourself to need it. They are still not because they are passive, but because they are perpetually prepared. They are silent not because they are afraid, but because they are constantly listening to the deeper currents of existence. They are powerful not because they seek to dominate, but because they have absolutely no need to. So I press you. What would truly happen if you relinquished every last vestige of needing to be understood, validated, seen, or saved? What transformative shift would occur if you ceased striving to earn your place and instead simply claimed it? What would unfold if you stopped reacting to the world and began deliberately to choose? Would you finally discover your throne because it is already there awaiting you? Not in some distant sky, not within the hallowed walls of a temple, not in your next breakthrough or spiritual download or fleeting upgrade. It resides in the profound stillness you've instinctively avoided, the deafening silence you compulsively fill, the terrifying void you incessantly run from. That is where your throne, the bloodless throne, truly waits. Principle 3, the forbidden silence. Entering the void, where only the elite survive. Most people equate silence with peace, a welcome reprieve from the incessant noise, a quiet haven for rest. They are tragically mistaken. The dark chosen ones, the true masters of command, understand a secret truth. There exists a silence so intense, so pure, so absolute, that it doesn't offer peace. It brings obliteration. This isn't just a break from external clamor, it is a portal. When you step into this void, stripped of every distraction, devoid of identity, released from all expectation, something simultaneously terrifying and divine begins to unfold. You begin to disappear, not physically, not emotionally, but spiritually. Your meticulously crafted story, your lingering pain, your inflated pride, your cherished wounds, even your hard-won wisdom, it all starts to dissolve. And what remains isn't an empty chasm. It is pure presence, unfiltered, unbranded, unblemished consciousness. Most cannot endure this space for long. They instinctively grasp for a stray thought, cling to a comforting mantra, desperately recall a memory, a title, a name. Their ego, their very sense of self, screams in protest. But the true elite persist. They sit in that terrifying void and allow it to consume them because they know this profound silence isn't death. It is rebirth. I have personally sat in that silence, not for mere minutes or hours, but for days. No light, no sound, no food, no external voice, just the relentless rhythm of my breath and pulse and the infinite crushing weight of selflessness. And in that chilling stillness, I confronted every single fear I had ever harbored, the primal dread of being forgotten, the agony of being profoundly misunderstood, the ultimate terror of becoming nothing. And then I did become nothing. It was the single most powerful, most liberating moment of my entire existence. Because in that profound nothingness, I discovered the source of absolutely everything. The forbidden silence is forbidden, not because it is locked away by some external force, but because it utterly paralyzes the mind. The ego, even the rare sacred ego, the spiritual ego, the very identity of being awakened, cannot survive in that space. The void doesn't care how many profound visions you've experienced. It is indifferent to your follower count. It holds no concern for the depth of your healing journey. It doesn't even acknowledge whether you are chosen. It demands only one thing: can you be still enough to vanish? This is the ultimate test. Because what reemerges from that vanishing isn't some better version of your old self. It is a non-version, a raw frequency, a pure presence, a force that no longer belongs to the personal. It belongs to the field itself. And once you embody that, you wield a kind of power that doesn't come from effort or striving. It comes from being an utterly pure conduit. You no longer speak from acquired knowledge. You speak from truth itself. You don't act from personal will. You act from perfect alignment. You don't move energy. Energy simply moves through you. This is what truly terrifies any adversary, any demon. Not your light, not your elaborate rituals, not your protective spells. They fear the ones who have gone utterly silent, who have become completely still, who have emptied themselves to the core. Because emptiness is untouchable. It cannot be tempted. It cannot be manipulated. It cannot be provoked. It does not react. It simply watches. It witnesses. It contains. That is the essence of what the 1% of the dark chosen ones become. Containers for the ineffable, the embodiment of that which has no name, no face, no form, yet subtly bends reality at will. But let's be brutally honest. This is not the path most desire. Most crave power they can overtly control, an awakening that makes them feel uniquely special. Most wish to navigate a spiritual journey without ever having to genuinely die to themselves. And that's perfectly acceptable. That is their chosen path. Yet you are still here reading this. This tells me something profound. It tells me you have already heard the terrifying call of the silence. You have already tasted the void. You have already felt that strange, unsettling pull toward something you cannot articulate, a kind of ancient remembering, a profound, sacred aloneness. Do not recoil from it. Do not run. Because that very silence, that terrifying void is not your end. It is the beginning of what you genuinely are. And when you venture deep enough into it, you will discover the final doorway, a space beyond identity, beyond story, beyond even the very concepts of being elite or chosen. You will find a presence so vast, so utterly still, so profoundly radiant, that it requires no name. It needs no mission. It possesses no need to be feared. It simply is. And from that state of pure being, everything else, all genuine command, all true influence, effortlessly aligns. This is where authentic leadership truly originates, not from ambition or strategic maneuvering, but from pure resonance. This is where profound healing begins, not from intellectual knowledge, but from an unshakable frequency. This is where genuine power emerges, not from relentless doing, but from profound disappearing. So I put one final chilling question to you. Can you allow yourself to vanish? Can you release everything you cling to, even the most sacred parts of your perceived self? Can you let go of the desperate need to be seen as wise, as deep, as rare, as powerful, and simply become the silence itself? Because that is where the throne, your true throne, resides. Not in the temple, not in the teachings, not in the accolades or titles, but in the void that remains when all of it is irrevocably gone. If you can sit there, if you can breathe there, if you can truly love there, then you are already one of them. Not because you have earned it through striving, but because you have emptied yourself enough to truly receive it. And now the path is blindingly clear. No more striving, no more proving, no more performing. Just silence. Just presence, just unvarnished truth. The demons won't touch you, not because you are too strong, but because you are too still. Welcome to the throne no one sees. Welcome to the power that needs no name. Welcome to the silence that now speaks through you. You are already there.